And thank you, Michael, for coming on. Much appreciated. And for everything else. We'll move back to item number 22, the application to the 2014-15 Metropolitan Discretionary Response Fund, which is a related matter. And Phil would like to move that, seconded by Andrew Turner. Are there any questions or any? Jimmy?
Thank you. Only the part-time, the social worker, the $32,000 plus. That's how many hours a week? It's a yearly basis, am I right? This salary, $32,000.
Yes, that's a
yearly basis. Okay.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
How many hours?
Well, we have to see the calibre of the person we get to fit in with the funding we've got, I guess. So
Yes.
I can't give you a definitive answer about that. We will also be utilising some of our own existing staff.
Yes.
We intend to take a holistic approach to the social work roles so that if budget advice is needed for this family, our existing counsellor can do that. If there's drug and alcohol issues, our existing service, which is quite considerable, can do that. So we haven't settled on exact hours
Not yet.
at the moment, sir.
Okay, thank you.
I could add that in terms of the staff supporting that for
Yes.
that part-time position is because we know that the City Mission is very used to working with complex cases across a lot of agencies. So we know that although it's a part-time position, there'll be a lot of collaboration with other social workers and other teams and other agencies to make it all work. So we feel reassured by that.
Okay, thank you.
Yanni?
Yeah, given that this is for one part-time position and some operating costs is about the same amount that we fund the Tenants Protection Association who work across the city, how have you come up with the justification for that quantum of $53,000? It seems like a huge amount of funding given our financial pressures in context of other groups that we fund to do similar work.
Well, in terms of other organisations, we are only a contributing funder. For example, with Tenants Protection and other such groups, we're not the only funder. So the amount that we give them isn't all of their services. In terms of this, it is 100% of the operating costs for this particular project, which, given that it's evidence-based work, and we know that about this organisation, and that it meets the outcomes of the Strengthening Community Strategy, it appears to staff to be very good value for money. The families that, my understanding is that the families will not be able to be self-reliant and make a go of a new home without that kind of professional support.
Supplementary, in terms of, I would have thought that MSD or Housing New Zealand should be contributing as well. Are they contributing nothing to this position and operating costs?
I think I was that we're going to, for ongoing support of this, we're going to work with the City Mission to work with MSD. I think what staff were trying to do in working with the City Mission and the clear direction was to get this up and going as fast as humanly possible and set it up in a way that would succeed. From this point of view, it's about getting it off the ground, getting it set up so we can get that input into and support those families and get them housed. And that gives us a bit of time to basically get on and try and set this up on a sustainable ongoing basis, whether that's a contribution from us or from other government departments or whatever. But the urgency and why we could probably take another 6 or 8 months and go down that track. But that's 6 or 8 months with people not in 3 flats. So staff's drive was, let's get this up and running and set it up for success, and then continue to work to put it into the context, the wider context that is so important for Christchurch.
Really what I was just trying to understand, has MSD been asked for funding and have they said no?
No, not at this stage.
Vicky? That this initiative arose from the City Council seeing the issue of housing, and particularly of kids living in places where they should never be living in our town. And because we want to do something fast, we actually came to the Housing Committee. The Housing Committee looked at, actually initially we were looking at 200,000 from the City Council Housing Fund, not rates funded, but from the City Council Housing Fund to make this happen. The government then very quickly, in the space of a phone call, said, we will contribute half of this, which is great. In terms of our grants, I think it's fantastic that we are aligning grants money to the objectives of the City Council. And one of our key objectives has to be getting kids particularly, but everyone, into a warm, dry house and not having them live in circumstances that are just not okay. I don't know if you do, but I get a hell of a lot of phone calls from school principals and all sorts of people who have got families who are just breaking apart under the stress of housing. And so the point of this was a tiny little move. It doesn't solve very much at all, but it gets something underway. There was a building that was empty. The City Mission were incredibly responsive to doing something about that. And I think the important signal that it sends is that if we all act together, like the City Mission, the City Council, the government, and any other community group that is interested in doing this, then we can make some gains in the current awful housing situation that we have. So I'm delighted that our grants money is going into something that actually helps people with real needs to get out of the situation that they're in. I'm delighted that our grants money actually aligns with the whole objectives of the council. I think it should do a great deal more of that. And I'm delighted that staff have been amazingly proactive, as has the City Mission, in making this happen. So I don't have any concerns about what we're doing here at all. Totally in favour of it. Phil, then Paul.
Look, I want to endorse Vicky's comments just now too, and I want councillors to know that as a former social worker, this to me is a very good example of social work being joined up with the agencies. And it's got, in terms of social services, it's never ideal. We know that. However, this project is for people, for mothers and children particularly from all ethnicities who are among the most vulnerable in our city. And of course they're going to need some social work input, there's no question of that. I applaud the project. I think it's really good use of the Metropolitan Fund, and I think it's a good part as a joined up solution. So thank you to the staff.
Yeah, Paul.
Yeah, I think a community that we want to live in is a community that looks after each other, and I think the council leading that's actually a really good thing. And I think the huge social cost to the issues we see in our city, and a lot of it is around housing, and for us to give a small contribution, we'll get a social rebate back in having a better place to live for these people, and I'm really, really supportive of this.
Yeah, Glenn.
Yeah, thank you. I'm quite strong on this because I guess for me this is a real litmus test for our recovery. If we actually don't house or make attempts to house those who are homeless, I just wonder how much meaning we have. I've been quoted in some interviews saying, you know, this sort of stuff is very sort of unsexy. You can have all the flash projects you like, which you can, but actually this is about Maslow's hierarchy of needs. If you're not housing people, what are we here for? What's it all about? So I'm sorry, but this is not just another group.
Yanni.
I totally endorse the fact that housing, excuse me, is incredibly important. I have said that that should be a top priority for our city for a long time, pretty much since the earthquakes occurred. So I totally endorse doing things in the housing space to deal with the chronic crisis that we have. But housing is just one part of it. We just heard at the Housing Committee the other day the mental health statistics, and we heard that they are constrained within the same services that they've had without any extra funding. So, you know, it's just not a sustainable model to keep putting funding into a massive problem, and I appreciate we have to try and make a difference where we can. So I will support this, but I think we need to be really upfront that there are many other things we also need to do. Things like rent stabilisation, which hasn't happened yet. The abolition of letting fees, which create financial hardship for people and make it difficult for people to move or actually make it difficult for people to get housing. A warrant of fitness. I don't want people living in unhealthy houses. And what are we seeing happening in our city with things like asbestos, things like dust, things like lack of insulation and energy efficiency measures? There are a number of other things we also must do as a city and as a council. I think we need to be advocating for those as well. All of it together will help address the major problem that we have. I do hope that this role can actually make a difference. I do hope that it can be extended to work with others who may not be able to be in this complex, but maybe having issues around housing. There are a number of groups that are actually working in the housing field within our city who are trying to find housing, and supply is really one of the chronic issues. The too much demand, lack of supply, that is a massive issue, as is the affordability. So, you know, I'll support this, but again, I raise the point, it's not sustainable for council just to keep funding new services, new projects in our financial situation that we're in, without getting the support of government, without getting some regulations around some of the other critical factors that are contributing to this problem. And so it has to be a joint-up approach, and we do need more work done, I think, to deal with it, rather than just us being the funder that has to pick up the pieces time and time again.
Okay. Are there any other comments? I'll put the motion. All those in favour say aye. Those opposed say no. Carried. Thank you very much, and thank you for all of your hard efforts right across the board.